Okay, this is a video about this wonderful book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. This for me is a 9 out of 10. It's not a particularly glamorous or exciting topic, but it is an extremely important one. The main takeaway from the book is that sleep is vital to maintaining good health, and we should be getting around 8 hours of sleep every night, and to try to improve the quality of that 8 hours as much as possible by looking at the light conditions in the room. So he recommends, before going to sleep, making sure that the room is sufficiently dark, because your brain can only tell whether it's night or day by the light that's coming in to the eyes. And when it's dark, your brain starts releasing melatonin, and this is synchronized to your circadian cycle. So we have two big factors which determine how tired we are and the sleeping cycle of our bodies. And the first one is the circadian cycle, and this is coordinated and orchestrated by something called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which sits just behind the eyes, and this coordinates with the pineal gland to release melatonin into the brain when it's dark. The other thing is to try to sleep in a slightly colder room. One of the reasons why it can be so difficult to sleep in the summer is because the temperature being hot, once again your body kind of thinks it's daytime and your body wants to go to sleep at night time. There is some difference between humans as well. Not everyone's circadian cycle is the same. There are night owls and early birds. You know, some people, including myself, prefer to sleep slightly later, but we do have a circadian cycle. He talks about how jet lag, you know, like flying to a faraway country, this can really wreak havoc on the circadian cycle, because it kind of puts it out of kilter, and it can take quite a long time for your body to adjust to a different time zone. And the other big factor is what he calls sleep pressure, which increases during the day as a result of adenosine. Coffee makes you feel more awake because it contains caffeine, which inhibits adenosine receptors, and in so doing, it stops the adenosine receptors from telling your brain that you're sleeping. Effectively, that's what's going on when we drink coffee. So that's the big take from the book, is that not getting enough sleep can have serious, dramatic, detrimental consequences on the human body. Because the big reason why we sleep is for our immune system to go to work. That's the overarching purpose. Rather like a bridge needing constant maintenance, constant updating, or you can think of it like a computer. Computer needs some kind of antivirus, anti-malware protection software, because otherwise it's going to be vulnerable to constant attack. But a bridge needs to be repaired regularly in order for it to stay standing. And in some ways, the human body, it's much more important that we get regular maintenance. One, because the body is extremely complex, and all of those sophisticated structures and processes, they need to be constantly maintained. The intricacy, the subtlety. For example, body temperature, that needs to be maintained within a very narrow window. And the same regarding blood pressure, glucose levels in the blood. And of course, inside our body, we're kind of swimming. If you think about the environment, it's full of pathogens, viruses and bacteria. Our gut, for example, contains trillions of bacteria. And so your body has to deal with all of this. The constant pressure, the constant attack from the elements of wind and rain, the physical elements, cuts and bruises to our skin, maybe bites from animals or falling down, but also the biological entities, which more or less see us as food. We're just food to biological entities. They don't really care about our survival necessarily, they just want to extract energy from us. And so your immune system has to protect you from all of these agents. And so that's really the primary importance of sleep. And the benefits of sleep have to be huge, because the costs of sleep from an evolutionary perspective, you know, if you imagine caveman thousands of years ago, millions of years ago, sitting on the ground, stationary, unaware of the environment for 8 hours, that's caveman or cavewoman. They're going to be vulnerable to predators, snakes, lions, mosquitoes. They're not going to be eating, they're not going to be exercising, and they're not going to be mating. So the costs of sleep are huge. So the fact that we do sleep, and all of the mammals sleep, must mean that the benefits, the advantages, the pros, outweigh the consequences. And really, it's the work of the immune system. You know, he talks about dementia and Alzheimer's, how sleep deprivation, and when he's talking about sleep deprivation, he really sees it as a scale. That is to say, we should be getting 8 hours, and anything less than the full 8 hours over time in particular is going to be increasingly detrimental, and certainly 6 hours or below is seriously not good for your body, because whilst you're asleep, your body is fighting against all kinds of harmful molecules and entities. So going back to Alzheimer's, the build-up of something called beta amyloid. It's a plaque that builds up in the brain, and it's been associated with Alzheimer's and dementia. But when you're asleep, your body has immunity cells. I think they're called killer cells. They can actually destroy the beta amyloid. And the same is possibly true of cancerous cells. Your body can actually fight against cancerous cells and tumours. We have natural defence, but if we are not getting sufficient sleep, we can suppress the quality of our immune system. And so you're multiplying the potential harm caused by all of these little things inside our bodies, which are there for their advantage and not for ours. The big advantages of getting your full 8 hours, so your memory improves. He talks about the role of the hippocampus, committing memories to the cortex, essentially saving them, storing them in long-term memory. The much better cognitive performance. We're simply much sharper, more intelligent, faster, more able to concentrate and focus for long periods of time, more able to think clearly when we've had a good night's sleep. So the benefits are colossal with regards to our productivity. He talks about how there are quite serious economic ramifications for sleep deprivation, and he's tried to give, quantitative data to suggest that getting less than, the recommended amount has effects on an economy, because people are not as productive as they otherwise would be. I like how at the start of the book he talks about non-REM sleep, which you can think of as kind of deep sleep, and REM sleep, which is like dream sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movements. When we're in REM sleep, And during an 8-hour cycle, REM sleep tends to occur more often at the end of that 8-hour cycle. And in those stages, our eyes are actually darting around. Can't see that, of course, because our eyelids are closed, but it's called REM because I think it was in the 1950s. It was discovered that, you know, the eyes are moving around during REM sleep. But REM sleep, which, by the way, drinking alcohol can particularly affect your ability to dream and get REM sleep. This is very good for creativity, because when you're dreaming, what's happening there is that your brain is connecting loosely affiliated ideas and kind of piecing together a jigsaw. You know, he talks about how it was Mendeleev. He woke up, he spent years trying to figure out how to put all of the elements in a logical order, i.e. what became the periodic table, and was unable to do so. But one night he said that he woke up and he sort of had the periodic table in his mind's eye, as it were. It was kind of a eureka moment. Similarly, he talks about how Paul McCartney woke up singing the tune to Yesterday. And it's quite common for inspiration to occur after a good night's sleep. And so getting the full 80 hours can make you much more imaginative, thinking outside the box, thinking beyond current horizons, an idea, a solution just appearing. And that's not mentioning all of the wonderful physical benefits. You know, he kind of says it's as important as exercise and eating. You know, he argues there's nothing really more important than a good night's sleep. And there's not one cell of the body that isn't affected in either a positive or negative way by getting a good amount of sleep or not. So, as I've mentioned, not a particularly exciting topic perhaps. You might look at this and think, doesn't look particularly fun. But it's an example of a book that if you read it and take it on board and apply it, it not only could help make you live longer, but could make you happier. You know, because there's nothing that can really make you more upset than waking up in a bad mood, and you upset other people in the workplace. You're not able to function clearly, and then that has knock-on effects and knock-on effects and knock-on effects, and then your health will start to deteriorate. You know, but getting the 8 hours, wake up with a kind of spring in your step, and do so on a daily basis, and much less likely to suffer with common cold and flus, because your immune system goes to work and really does the hard job of clearing out all of the little things that you don't want in your body. So, really excellent book. An example of a book that can seriously make a difference if its lessons are applied. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.